Hello gardening friends, welcome to the Calyx Services Garden. I am Thelma and today I'm sharing with you these three lovely blooms and ask you, do you know the plant? Chances are you do, but really the question is, what do you call it? Now I know it as the powderpufflily. I've also heard it called the football lily, the pincushion flower, and many other names. But luckily for us and the system of naming plants, this lovely plant only has one official, one Latin name, and it's Scadoxus multiflorus. Wherever in the world you are, you Google Scadoxus multiflorus, and you will find a lot of information about it. It is blooming at this time in the northern hemisphere. This is late spring, early summer, and it's blooming in my garden as well as many other gardens around us. And I thought it was an opportune time to feature it. And in this video, I'll be telling you about its growing requirements, a bit about its growth cycle, as well as how we care for it in the garden. So please keep watching. Thanks for staying and welcome back. And I'll start with some general information on the powderpufflily, Scadoxus. It is native to the sub-Saharan African region as well as the Arabian Peninsula. Definitely a tropical plant. It will not tolerate temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees centigrade. It definitely will not tolerate cold temperatures without some level of protection. Now, although it's referred to as a lily, it is not a true lily. It is a member of the amaryllis family, similar to hippeastrums. There's quite a close similarity between the Scadoxus and the hippeastrum amaryllis. They're both grown from bulbs. See the lovely bulb here in this plant? The shoots, the leaves come from the center of the bulb and the blooms from the side. I like to call it the side pocket. So, and there is also, Scadoxus also has a distinct dormancy period here in the Caribbean and in other parts of North America, in the subtropical areas. It tends to go dormant. First the leaves dry and the entire upper portion of the plant, the above ground portion, will go dry by about the end of October into November. And at that point, you can keep it in the ground because in our climate, yes, it's grown outdoors, but you have to remember where it's planted because if you're not careful, it will be damaged. You might get somebody trying to plant something else in the same location as has happened. So you have to make a marker where your Scadoxus is lying dormant. And later on in this video, I'll show you what I did last year in terms of the alternative to letting it stay in the bed. I mentioned it's grown in beds, but it does equally well in containers. And the advantage of growing it in containers is that you have more flexibility. You can take it up out of the focal area, the display area, and keep it in a protected area during its dormancy and bring it out again, as I have done, when it starts to bloom. In terms of what it likes a free draining soil that is high in organic matter. Certainly it can take regular soil, but make sure it is not waterlogged because it certainly will not do well if there is too much water accumulating in the bottom of the pot. Make sure that you water it only when the top 3 inches or so gets dry, and it can take some amount of drying out because it has that bulb that stores a fair bit of water. In terms of sunlight, it does very well in full sunlight or partial shade. I selected this rather narrow bed to plant the first 2 powderpuff bulbs that I got. This bed receives dappled light, and at the time it was planted out with strawberry plants. The bulbs bloomed within a year, and I liked the bulbs so much that when the leaves dried down at the end of October last year, I dug up the larger bulb, which at the time had 5 offsets. I planted them all, the offsets and the mother plants, in separate pots, of course, and place them in a shaded location in the nursery, an area that did not get any direct sunlight at all. Once per month, I watered the pots lightly and kept an eye on them to make sure that they remained dormant. They remained dormant for about 4 months, and it wasn't until mid-March of this year that I saw the first sign of shoots on the mother plant, on the mother bulb. And they grew rather quickly because here they are in mid-May, by which time 3 plants had sent out flower scapes. So as we saw, the 6 plants, they all came up. They came up within 2 or 3 weeks of each other. The first one that came up was the largest one and started blooming, I would think, within a month or so of it emerging from dormancy. And at this point, we are lucky to have 3 blooming plants, and I'm waiting anxiously to see what would happen in these. But in these cases, because I know the bulbs were really rather small, I would be highly surprised if they started blooming the first day after they were potted out. But I'm going to give this one a chance and leave it. Wouldn't disturb it. But what I want to do, what I'm going to do now for training purposes, is really to examine what has happened in the pot since the plant has resumed resumed growth. And what I'm going to do is really take it out. In a way, I'm sacrificing it because it's better not to disturb the plant. But what I'm going to do now is to examine what's happening, share it with you, and repot. Put 2 bulbs in 1 pot, let them continue growing together so that next year I have an even more spectacular display. Okay. These darker roots are the original. 3 roots went in with the bulb, and since it started growing in March, that's 2 months, it has produced this amount of roots, which is very good. And as I said, this size bulb, you would not expect it. Well, it's certainly not mature enough to start reproducing itself. So let me examine. This one is even smaller. So I would expect the same thing. Oh, it actually has more roots. And there's nothing at all wrong with this mixture. I can reuse it in a pot, in the same pot. But since I've already mixed this one for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use the fresh mix. So this one has not just the nice fleshy white roots, the feeder roots, but it has quite a network of finally roots, which I would suspect is going to power this plant at a faster rate than this one, which has fewer of the finer roots. So the potting mix, I mentioned that it has to be free draining, light, fair bit of organic matter to retain moisture, but not to be soggy. So I have here about a quarter of the mix is coconut chunks, small chunks. Another 25 or 30% is the commercial store-bought mixture, growing media, and the majority, the remainder, is my homemade compost. So the compost will provide the nutrients. The coconut chunks will keep the moisture, and the perlite and other ingredients in the commercial mix, the vermiculite and the perlite, will ensure good drainage. And when this plant needs more food, we will apply a balanced foliar fertilizer about once a month, or when it suggests that it needs. And at this point, really, it is still showing. It is showing some amount of yellowing, so I think it's suggesting it needs to be fed. Right. Given the small size of the bulb, I've decided to use an 8-inch pot rather than the 10-inch pot originally prepped. And I've placed potting mix in the bottom half of this pot, and proceeding to plant. I think it can take a bit more potting mix because, like amaryllis, you should not bury the bulb further than its neck. So in this case, if I want it to be there, I should put about this amount of potting mix in the bottom. The roots are covered. I've firmed them in place so the watering isn't going to dislodge it too much. And the last step is to water, and water thoroughly. Make sure in the first water, it comes through the bottom. Putting 2 bulbs in a pot, I am told, is actually good for the puff lily because, like the amaryllis, they tend to do better if they're snug in a pot. After this transplanting, I'm going to keep it in a cool, protected area. Let everything settle down before I take it out into the bright area where that gets about 4 to 6 hours of sunshine per day. So Scadoxus, it's one of those plants you eagerly await its reawakening in the spring. But if you're not careful, if you don't remember where you planted, you may miss it because, hey, somebody may come and plant something else in the same spot when the bulb is in dormancy. So know where you've planted it and take protective action to make sure that it is not destroyed or damaged or dislodged when it's in its dormant period. This takes me to the end of our video on Scadoxus multiflorus, otherwise called powderpufflily, ball of fire, and any number of names. We showed you how we take care of it in the garden, and at this point I'm very interested in expanding the number of plants we have. And we hope that you too, your interest is piqued and that you will seek out this lovely plant and care for it likewise. Now, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and leave us a comment. Let us know other aspects that you'd like us to cover, or even other plants that you'd like us to cover. So until the next video, this is Thelma saying thanks for watching, you take care, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.